Hello, everyone, and welcome to Team Orion. This is a channel which will hopefully eventually document or rather act as a video diary of sorts, sort of video progression of my hopeful eventual journey towards making a fighting robot, a battle bot, if you will, for those of you more inclined to use that sort of terminology. Think of Robot Wars or BattleBots for the main two names that people really know when it comes to the fighting robots. Um, Although, of course, your local area may have its own tournament or mainstream fighting robot ring. Um, but eventually, I hope to build my own. It's something I've wanted to do for a while. And this channel is essentially going to act as a sort of visual diary slash log of my progress towards eventually building a heavyweight robot. And it all sounds very dumb and stupid at the moment to me saying that. However, it is something I eventually want to do. I can't promise how long this will take. I can't promise whether it will be done in months. It definitely won't be months. I can't promise it if it will be years. It could be however long it takes. Is the short answer. But this channel will essentially document everything that I feel needs documenting in my progress to doing that. Of course, it will take a lot of time, it will take a lot of space, it'll take a lot of materials, and most importantly, it will take a lot of money and skill. So, lots of things that I need to work on, particularly the money and skill part. But for now, I'm going to be showing you the robots that I will eventually want to make, and it's this robot right here in the foreground, titled Flipdisc, and it is essentially the robot that I most want to make out of all the robots I have built in this game. This game, by the way, if you are unfamiliar with it, is a game called Brick Rigs. It is essentially a Lego-like game, vehicle designing game where you can sort of build anything out of, well, not Lego, but very, very similar Lego like thing, and you can build sort of anything you want out of it. And in this case, this was for a um, a sort of failed series of BattleBots that was going to be done. They were going to be have fights filmed and tournaments and everything, and I built a bunch of them. It didn't go anywhere, and these things are now sitting on the back burner. But this is the most successful robot I built, and it's the one that I like the most. And I'm essentially going to talk you through it and what the challenges are going to be for it, or at least the main challenges. Obviously, it's all going to be a challenge to build it, but the main challenges of it for me when it comes to sort of sourcing parts, building it, blah blah blah. But essentially, Flipdisc is the robot that I like the most out of all of the robots that I have built. And yeah, I'm just sort of going to talk you through it here and in the editor when we go back in there. And I'm just essentially going to talk about this robot. Talk about why I like it, why I think it would be good. Sort of trying to pitch this to you for some strange reason. But yeah, essentially why I like this robot, why I want to build it, and yeah, we're sort of going to go from there. So this is the robot. It has two main weapons. It has a forward flipper at the front, and it has a rear spinning horizontal flywheel disc at the back. So it has two main weapons in case one of them goes down. That's the essential idea of it. So the forward firing flipper is essentially very much like Firestorm, and the rear disc is very much like Hypnodisc. If you watched any of the old series of Robot Wars, and I have built both examples of those two vehicles here in Brick Rigs previously. So here's some that I made earlier. So yeah, there's Firestorm with its front flipper, and there is Hypnodisc with its horizontal large flywheel, very destructive. And essentially, um, there goes the front flipper. As you can see, it just sort of flips up and down, nice and easy. And the rear disc simply spins, and the teeth cut into them. Very simple. The colors and design-wise, it's very much designed to look like an Apollo. Um, and Apollo Saturn V with its multicolor, or I should say its black and white pattern. So it's very much based on a Saturn V rocket color scheme, and Orion is just a reference to that. So yeah, Team Orion, we have the Saturn V looking robot. That's kind of the idea here. So yeah, two very simple. Well, I say very simple, just two weapons for the main thing. Horizontal disc to do some damage, and some a forward flipper to well, do some flipping. And if they don't have a Shremek, which is a self-righting mechanism, um, then yeah, obviously the flipper's going to just flip them over, which Firestorm was quite capable of doing. Let's tried driving it, the game said no. So what we're going to do here is we are going to enter into the editor with this thing, and I will show you, I just removed it, and I will show you um, how we how this thing works here in BrickRigs essentially. If I can remember the controls, there you go. So if we just file open this thing, here we go. So Flipdisc is formed of a main central box area, which is right here. We also have the front ramp, which is obviously how they get onto the flipper. We have the flipper itself, and then obviously we have the disc at the back. So if I hide the side skirting here, you can see how this thing runs. It's got a set of two large wheels at the back and a set of two small wheels at the front. This may change as I go through and figure out more of this thing, how it would work in real life, because obviously this is a game and the game is a lot different to real life. So it may be that two large rear wheels and two small front wheels does not work, and it would require a lot of sort of ratioing and working out how to get those two things in sync. It may be that a simple four standard size wheels would work, but it would essentially be a sort of skid steer chassis, so it could turn on the spot, and a sort of very standard skid steer design, using just the two sets of wheels, and it would simply drive itself around and be able to turn on the spot and whatnot, which would be very handy. So the main flipper, obviously, they come up the ramp and they hit the flipper, and the flipper flips them forwards. It's very effective here in BrickRigs, but obviously BrickRigs physics is not exactly the same as um, real life physics. So the side skirting is quite literally just side skirting. It is a belt of armor that will protect the side of the robot. The top of the robot. So I did mention that flippers are obviously very effective against robots that are unable to run either both ways up or unable to right themselves somehow. Flipdisc in its current iteration here in BrickRigs does not have a way of righting itself. It does not have a Shremek, which is kind of an issue because if it lands on its back, you can't flip it over, and it is not invertible, so it can't run both ways up. Due to the fact that this is a box and not a solid wedge shape, you can't simply flip yourself over using the flipper. The flipper's also not big enough. So the idea of this is that the one thing that I was thinking was changing this top paneling, because obviously in BrickRigs, because it is very much formed of Lego, if I hide some of these things, as you can see, these are all plates, the thick to give the coloring. Obviously, you wouldn't have that in real life. You would simply have the coloring painted on. So the idea, I think, possibly is to have a sort of rectangular shaped Shremek, which would just be an entire part of the top paneling, which would lever itself open and allow you to pretty much just flip yourself. I keep saying simply when none of this is simple, but it will essentially just work as a giant lever arm and push you over back onto your wheels again. That's the idea that I have for a Shremek. Flip yourself, because otherwise there is no way of righting yourself with this robot, which is definitely not a good idea when one flip would end your fight straight away. So yeah, that's this whole section, and then the rear disc is very much just a rear disc. I have it on this sloped ramp area, which I think just looks cool. However, it is relatively high up on the robot. The robot itself is actually relatively low down to the ground, which is another thing that I like about this, is that it is a very much low center of gravity. So ideally it would be very stable. It would ideally be very stable to drive around. And obviously, being low down means you know, people with tall weapons would have problems hitting you, which is also an issue with this because this is very much in line. Uh, yeah, like these top studs are pretty much in line with the top part of the main covering. Um, so yeah, having it high up like this means low down enemies have a chance of not getting hit or not getting vitally hit, which is not what you want. So yeah, that's kind of the issue with that. This may have to change. This may have to be mounted lower down. It may have to have some sort of other mechanism to keep it going or something. I'm not sure. That's something to work out later. This is very much a sort of first design thing. And then these curved pieces are just mainly decorative, though they are also to protect the back of the robot from things jamming in this way, I guess. Um, it sort of adds extra structural stability. To the side belting, and also it just kind of looks pretty neat. It allows the disc to sort of spin around um, in this nice sort of concave shapy area, which I just think looks kind of cool. But yeah, so that is the main points of the robot. You've got the ramp, the top part, and then the rear spinning disc with the side belting. Yeah, those are your main 4 points. Everything here is made out of aluminium because that was part of the rules when it came to us building these robots. There was armoring rules, and this tungsten at the front here is the heaviest material in the game, and it was designed to weigh down the front of the robot so that when you accelerated, it didn't flip itself straight up, and so the ramp actually has purchase to get underneath enemy robots. That's kind of the thing. So powering the robot would probably just be electric motors, which is a relatively standard method of powering robots. Electric motors, um, electric motors with a battery setup. Probably the same for the rear disc, possibly. Um, and my hope would be to have the front flipper be pneumatic, um, which is a similar method to what Firestorm does, because I think pneumatics would be longer, better longevity, whereas regular forward flippers tend to use carbon dioxide, CO2 canisters, to power their flippers, and that runs you the risk of if you make too many flips in a battle, you run out of carbon dioxide and can't use your main weapon, which would not be ideal. So my hope would be to power this front flipper using pneumatics, some sort of pneumatic system, um, which obviously you run the risk of if something happens to that system, you then lose your weapon entirely. But then I suppose the same happens with CO2 canisters. If your CO2 canister gets dislodged or punctured, then you don't have CO2. So it's kind of, if you lose pneumatic fluid, then your flipper won't work. But then that's the same for carbon dioxide. So I just think pneumatics would be better for longevity in a fight. That's kind of just my reasoning here. Obviously, all of this is very theoretical. I haven't built a robot before, so this is all kind of very fanciful, and it's also very money reliant. So, yeah, that's kind of the issue with pneumatics, especially pneumatics are relatively expensive. I say relatively, they are very expensive. Armoring wise, titanium is obviously the ideal material of choice for armoring here. However, that is also very expensive per sheeting. So probably armoring on an actual one would probably come to steel. I hesitate to say aluminium. Probably steel would be best. Maybe go to a junkyard, get some scrap steel or something. Who knows? But yeah, so that is essentially the ins and outs of Flipdisc. If we get it here, and hopefully I can demonstrate it a little bit here in brick rigs, I do obviously have my opponent over here, for example. This is actually a version 2 of this particular robot, but if we can get under it, then we can flip it all the way over, and if he doesn't have a Shremek, which he does because I built it on this robot, these two lines here are its Shremek, but if it didn't have one, then obviously this would be kind of an issue for it. It's also an issue that my electric motor has been dislodged, which is again part of the rules that we laid out for these robots when we built them. But yeah, essentially we can sort of flip them around as we please. Ow. And I've lost my electric motor again. But that's just, that's how the flipper works. If you've seen a flipper, then you know how the flipper works. And the rear disc is very much, rear discy. It cuts in, which Brick Rigs doesn't like having physics like this cutting in. So yeah, that's not quite working. But we'll see if we can't flip somebody else. Hypnodisc, come here. Come here. Get on my ramp. So there's the ramp. Having sort of very low ground clearance is kind of the ideal method there, but this is one player Brick Rigs here, trying to do all this. But yeah, this is the essential how the robot works. It's kind of cutty, kind of flippy, and yeah, it kind of is relatively self-explanatory. Beyond that, see if we can't flip Firestorm. Come here, Firestorm. No, Firestorm doesn't want to go. Never mind. But yeah, so that is the essentials of what this robot is that I want to make. Then there's Firestorm's front flipper if you've not seen it before. This is essentially how it works. It's very much more rectangular than it is in real life. That's just due to how I made the robot. But yeah, it's a very similar concept to how Firestorm does it. So that's my plan with Flipdisc. I think it would be a good robot when it is done. However, that will be a long time, a very long time. So don't get your hopes up for seeing something out of this project soon, because that's definitely not happening. I am a student, but a mere student, not in robotics or engineering. So yeah, that's kind of the main issue with this at the beginning here, the finance and knowledge. But yes, eventually something will happen with this project. I certainly hope. And like I say, this channel will hopefully, my engine's come out again. Hopefully this channel will act as a video diary for when we look back on it as a successful project. But that is it for now, the ins and outs of Flipdisc. So yes, I hope you enjoy this inaugural video on the channel, and I look forward to hopefully making more as they develop, and yeah, making more update videos, hopefully with something more tangible for you in the future. So for now, I will thank you all for watching, and goodbye.